My cousin did that while we slept in the same room. I didn't know what to do. My cousin, someone I always trusted, did something that completely shattered my sense of safety. I woke up to a noise I never expected to hear and saw him doing something that haunts me to this day. I was frozen, unable to react, trapped in a nightmare I never imagined. Last week, I went on a family vacation that I'll never forget, not for the fun memories we made at Universal Studios, but for the horrifying experience that has haunted me ever since. I never imagined that something like this would happen during a family trip, but now it feels like I've been scarred for life. To give you some context, I live in Orlando, Florida, and my family decided to visit me for the weekend. It was supposed to be a fun trip to the theme parks with all of us staying together at an Airbnb to make the most of our time. In total, we were a group of 11 people: my parents, my aunt and cousins, my sister and her husband, and their 2 kids. We wanted to have a good time together, bonding, laughing, and just enjoying each other's company. Although I live in Orlando, my family insisted that I stay with them at the Airbnb. They wanted to make sure I wasn't left out, even though it would have been more comfortable for me to sleep at my own place. But they kept saying that it would be better to be together as a family, and I didn't want to be the one to break the spirit of the trip, so I agreed. The Airbnb we rented was spacious enough to accommodate everyone, but there were still a few logistical challenges. Since there were only a limited number of rooms, my parents had to take one room, my sister and her family took another, and my aunt and her kids took a third. There wasn't much space left, so I ended up opting to sleep on the couch in the living room. I didn't mind. In fact, I thought it would be nice to be close to everyone, and I assumed I would still be able to get some rest. Little did I know that decision would be the one that changed everything. That first night, everything went as expected. We had a late dinner together, shared some laughs, and then everyone went to bed. I wasn't too tired, so I stayed up a bit longer, scrolling through my phone and watching TV. Eventually, I made my way to the living room to settle in for the night. The couch was big enough for me to stretch out, and I didn't mind that I was sleeping on it. Instead of a bed, I made myself comfortable and tried to drift off to sleep. It wasn't long before I started hearing the sounds of my family members settling in for the night. My cousin, who was a bit younger than me, came into the living room and asked if he could sleep on the other couch. I didn't think twice before agreeing. There were 2 couches after all, and it didn't seem like a big deal. He was family, and I figured we could both sleep in the living room and still have a good time. We hadn't been able to spend much time together during the day, so this would be a chance to chat a little and have a quiet night. It seemed harmless enough. But little did I know that this simple decision would turn into something that would haunt me for the rest of my life. I settled into the couch and tried to fall asleep, but it wasn't easy. I'm someone who has insomnia, so I often find myself tossing and turning in bed, struggling to get a decent amount of rest. That night was no different. I kept glancing at my phone, checking the time, trying to lull myself to sleep. The sounds of my family's soft murmurs and occasional laughter drifted in from the other rooms, but eventually everything grew quiet. By around 5 a.m., I was wide awake. I wasn't surprised. Insomnia always keeps me up late and makes me wake up early. I reached for my phone again, checking the time. It was way too early to be up, but I couldn't help it. As I lay there in the dark, trying to adjust my body to a more comfortable position, I heard something that immediately caught my attention. It was a noise that no woman ever wants to hear in the middle of the night. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but the sound grew louder, clearer. I couldn't ignore it. My heart skipped a beat, and I froze, trying to figure out what was going on. Slowly, I turned my head to the side, and that's when I saw it. My cousin, who had been sleeping next to me on the other couch, was lying there with his pants down, completely exposed, and he was masturbating. I could feel my entire body go cold. My heart raced, and I suddenly felt like I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream to get up and run out of the room, but I couldn't move. My body felt like it was paralyzed in shock. I couldn't comprehend what I was seeing. Why was he doing this? And more importantly, why was he doing it in the same room as me? We were supposed to be family, but in that moment, I felt something entirely different. I felt disgusted, violated, and trapped. The worst part was that I didn't know what to do. I felt like if I reacted, it would make the situation worse, especially since we were both lying there in the same room. I didn't want to embarrass him, but at the same time, I didn't want to pretend that everything was okay either. So I did the only thing I could think of at the time. I pretended to be asleep. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing myself to lie as still as possible. I didn't want him to know that I was awake and aware of what was happening, but inside, I was screaming. My mind racing with a million thoughts. none of which made any sense. Why would he do this in front of me? Why couldn't he just go to the bathroom, or at least find a more private place? As the minutes dragged on, I just lay there trying to ignore the sounds, trying to convince myself that I wasn't actually experiencing this. When he finally finished, I heard him quietly get back into his position, seemingly going back to sleep as if nothing had happened, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being completely violated. I felt a deep sense of shame, and it wasn't just about what happened, it was about the fact that I was left to deal with this all alone. The following moments felt like a blur. I lay there wide-eyed in the dark, my mind racing with confusion and disgust. I wanted to move, to say something, to scream, but my body wouldn't cooperate. I couldn't shake the images from my mind, the sound, the sight, the utter shock of what had just happened. It was as if I had been transported into another world, where nothing made sense anymore. I wanted to go back to sleep and pretend like nothing had happened, but that was impossible. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating, and I couldn't escape the feeling of being trapped in my own mind. As I lay there, my body frozen in place, I tried to convince myself that maybe it was all just some kind of weird mistake, some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe I had imagined it. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I had seen it with my own eyes. It had happened, and I couldn't unsee it. The weight of what had just occurred hung heavily in the air, and I felt like I was suffocating under its pressure. When morning finally came, it brought no relief. I had barely slept, and I was exhausted physically, mentally, and emotionally. I wanted to pretend like everything was fine, but the truth was, I felt completely shattered inside. I didn't know how to face anyone, especially not my cousin. How could I look him in the eye after what had happened? How could I go about the day as if everything was normal? But what scared me the most was that I couldn't talk to anyone about it. I couldn't tell my parents, my aunt, or anyone in the family. I didn't want to make things awkward, and I didn't want to be the one to bring up something so disturbing. I was scared of how they would react, and more than that, I was terrified that no one would understand what I was feeling. How could I explain the overwhelming sense of violation and trauma that had taken over my body? How could I make them understand the way my mind kept replaying those moments, the sounds, the images over and over again? I spent the rest of the morning trying to hide my emotions, pushing them deep down inside of me. I joined the rest of the family for breakfast, smiling and pretending like nothing had happened. Everyone seemed so carefree, laughing and chatting as if it was just another normal day, but I couldn't focus on anything they were saying. My thoughts kept drifting back to what I had witnessed. I couldn't stop thinking about my cousin, about how he had acted so casually afterward, as if nothing had changed. How could he be so nonchalant? How could he have done that in front of me and then just gone back to sleep as if it was no big deal? At one point, I caught my cousin looking at me across the table. His eyes met mine for a split second, and then he quickly looked away. He seemed nervous, fidgeting in his seat. Was he aware that I had seen what he did? Did he remember it, or had he completely blocked it out of his mind? I couldn't bring myself to ask. I couldn't bring myself to acknowledge it, because doing so would mean confronting everything I had been trying to avoid. And at that moment, all I wanted was for everything to go back to normal, for the pain and the discomfort to disappear. The rest of the day passed in a haze. We spent some time at the park, riding roller coasters and taking photos, but I couldn't enjoy it. Every time I saw my cousin, my stomach churned. I felt like I was living in some kind of twisted nightmare, and no matter how hard I tried to wake up, I couldn't. The family was still in high spirits, enjoying the vacation, but I was drowning in my own thoughts, trapped by my silence. That night, when we returned to the Airbnb, I retreated to the living room and curled up on the couch again. I couldn't sleep, not after everything that had happened. My mind was racing with questions, with confusion. Why did he do it? Was I just a bystander, or was there something more to it? Did he even realize the harm he had caused, or was he completely oblivious to the pain he had inflicted on me? I couldn't bring myself to talk to him. I couldn't bring myself to even look at him. Every time I thought about what happened, a wave of nausea would wash over me. I felt dirty, violated, like something had been taken from me, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. I couldn't stop thinking about the way my cousin had casually resumed sleeping after what he had done. How could he be so indifferent? I spent the entire night awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything. My thoughts were spiraling, and I felt utterly alone. I had no one to talk to, no one who would understand what I was going through. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was stuck in this dark, endless tunnel, and there was no way out. The next day, I tried to act normal. I put on a mask of indifference and went through the motions of the day, but it was all fake. I felt like I was living in some kind of alternate reality where everything was upside down and nothing made sense. I couldn't bring myself to confront my cousin, and I couldn't tell anyone what had happened. All I could do was hold it and bottle it up and pretend like it was just another weird, uncomfortable memory that would eventually fade away. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't. It was a part of me now, something I would never be able to forget. As the days went by, the pain in my chest only grew heavier. I didn't know how to escape it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. Every time I heard a sound, I was jolted back to that moment, his actions replaying in my mind like a loop I couldn't stop. I was haunted by the fear of being alone with him, and I couldn't shake the sense of betrayal that lingered in the pit of my stomach. Despite my growing unease, I told myself that I had to act like everything was fine. I couldn't keep pretending like I wasn't affected. The weight of the secret was crushing me, and I was suffocating in my own silence. I couldn't keep going on like this. I needed answers. I needed closure. One night, after everyone else had gone to bed, I found myself standing in the living room again, staring at the couch where it had all happened. The room was eerily quiet, the only sound being the soft hum of the air conditioner. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, thudding loudly, each beat a reminder of the emotional turmoil I had been trying to bury. I could no longer stay silent. I had to confront him. I had to face my cousin. It wasn't something I wanted to do, but I knew I couldn't avoid it any longer. I had no idea how he would react, but I couldn't live with the fear of this secret festering inside me any longer. The only thing I knew for sure was that I couldn't go on pretending that everything was normal when it clearly wasn't. I approached the hallway where my cousin was sleeping. My heart was pounding in my chest as I walked slowly, trying to steady my nerves. When I reached his door, I hesitated for a moment. I could hear him breathing lightly on the other side. My mind raced. What would I say? How would I even begin to explain how I felt, let alone confront him about what he had done? With a deep breath, I knocked softly on his door. There was a pause before I heard him stir. "Who is it?" he called out groggily. "It's me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" There was a long silence before the door creaked open. He stood there in his pajamas, looking confused and a little disoriented. I could see the faint outline of his tired face, his eyes still heavy with sleep. But underneath that, there was a flicker of anxiety, like he knew something was coming. "What's up?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. "I need to talk to you about what happened a few nights ago," I said, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to sound calm. His expression immediately shifted, and I could see the color drain from his face. He stepped back, motioning for me to come inside. The room was dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of the night lamp on his bedside table. I walked in and stood awkwardly by the door, unsure of what to do next. The air between us felt thick, charged with an unspoken tension. I don't know how to say this, but I began, but the words were stuck in my throat. "I don't know why you did what you did, but I saw everything. I saw you, while we were in the living room." He flinched at the mention of it, his face contorting with a mix of confusion and guilt. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. The silence hung heavy between us, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. "I don't understand why you did that. Why did you think it was okay to do something like that in front of me?" I asked, my voice breaking. "I'm not saying this to embarrass you, but you need to understand that it was wrong. It made me feel violated. I didn't ask for that, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. I can't just pretend like it didn't happen." He seemed to shrink back, his eyes darting around the room, unable to meet mine. I didn't mean for you to see that," he said, his voice small, barely above a whisper. I was half asleep. I don't even remember doing it, to be honest. I don't know why it happened. I didn't mean to make you feel uncomfortable. His words were weak, almost as if he were trying to convince himself more than me. I could see that he was genuinely sorry, but it wasn't enough. Sorry didn't erase what had happened. Sorry didn't take away the months, maybe even years of emotional scars that would follow me because of this. I get that you didn't mean to do it on purpose, but it doesn't change how I feel. I said the words, pouring out of me in a rush. I don't know if you realize how deeply this has affected me, but I feel like I don't even know how to describe it. It's like I've been taken advantage of. I don't feel safe anymore. I don't know how to go back to the way things were. There was a long pause, and I could see the shame on his face, his hands trembling slightly as he stood in front of me. "I'm really sorry," he said again, his voice almost inaudible. "I swear I never meant to hurt you. I don't know what happened. I don't even remember it, but I get that it was wrong. I'm really sorry. For a moment, I didn't say anything. His apology didn't fix anything, but it was a start. It was the acknowledgement I had been waiting for, the recognition that what he had done wasn't okay, that it had hurt me, but I still didn't know how to move forward from here. How could I look at him the same way again? How could I trust that something like this wouldn't happen again? I don't know how to feel. I finally said, my voice low. I don't know if I can ever forget this. It's just too much. He nodded silently, his head hanging in shame. I could see that he was truly regretful, but that didn't change the fact that my sense of safety had been shattered. There was no going back from this. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I continued, but I need time. I need space to process this. I can't be around you like I was before. Not right now. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. I understand, he said quietly. I'll give you the space you need. I nodded and turned to leave the room, my heart heavy with a mixture of anger, sadness, and confusion. The conversation hadn't fixed anything, but at least it had opened the door for me to start healing. At least it had given me a chance to speak my truth. As I walked away, I realized that this was just the beginning of the long journey I had ahead. Confronting my cousin had been necessary, but it hadn't brought the closure I had hoped for. I still didn't know how I was going to move forward, but at least now I could start taking the steps to heal, even if it meant walking away from him for a while. The following days felt like I was moving through a fog, disconnected from the world around me. I still couldn't shake the weight of what had happened. Each time I saw my cousin, I felt a sharp pang in my chest, a reminder of the conversation we had, the apology, the pain, the broken sense of safety. But no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, the trauma lingered. I had taken a step back, but the aftermath was far from over. I needed time to let the rawness of everything settle. Every time I found myself alone in a room, my thoughts would race back to that moment, his face, his movements, the realization of what he had done. It wasn't just the act itself that hurt me. It was the betrayal of trust, the violation of a boundary I hadn't even known needed to be set. That night, after the confrontation, I retreated into my room. I had been trying to distract myself with the idea of the trip focusing on the memories we were supposed to be making. But how could I look back on this trip and find any joy in it now? Every laugh, every conversation felt tainted, and the happiness I had tried to hold on to was slipping through my fingers like sand. I tried to focus on the positives, the laughter from my younger cousins, as they played together, the excitement everyone had for the theme park, but it was hard. It felt like I was wearing a mask, smiling on the outside, while breaking apart inside. I knew I had to talk to someone. I couldn't keep all of this inside me. I called my best friend Sarah, hoping that somehow talking to her would release the pressure I felt building within me. Sarah had always been my confidant, the one person who had always known when something was wrong, even when I didn't say anything. The phone rang, and when she picked up, I immediately burst into tears. "What happened?" she asked, her voice sharp with concern. "Talk to me." I couldn't explain it in the beginning. How could I explain to her what had happened, what I had witnessed, what I was feeling, without sounding like I was losing my mind? But eventually, the words spilled out. "Sarah, it was my cousin," I choked out. He did something to me, something I can't even describe. I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know how to move forward. He was right there, and I saw it all, and now I don't know what to feel, what to think. I feel like I can't breathe. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear Sarah's breath, a steady, calming presence in the midst of my chaos. "I'm so sorry," she said quietly, her voice soft. "I can't even imagine how much that must hurt. But I want you to know, you're not alone in this. I'm here for you. Okay? We'll figure this out together." Her words, though simple, were a lifeline. It felt like I wasn't drowning in my own mind anymore. I wasn't facing this battle alone. Sarah had always been my anchor, and hearing her voice calm, steady, and full of compassion made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I could begin to breathe again. "I don't know what to do," I whispered. "I feel so confused. I know he's sorry. I know he didn't mean for it to happen. But how can I just forget? How can I go back to how things were before? It's not just the action. It's the trust. It's the feeling of being violated. I feel like I'll never be the same again." Sarah was quiet for a moment before she spoke again. "First of all, it's okay to feel that way. What happened to you was wrong, and it's okay to feel hurt, violated, and angry. You don't have to forgive him right away. You don't even have to forgive him at all if you don't want to. But what you do need to do is take care of yourself. Take the time you need to process this, to heal. And if that means distancing yourself from him for a while, then that's okay. You don't owe him anything, especially not your peace of mind. Her words were exactly what I needed to hear. They didn't take away the pain, but they gave me permission to feel the pain and to take the time I needed to heal. The following days were a blur. I spent most of my time alone in my room, wrestling with my thoughts. It was hard to push through the discomfort of being in the same space as him, trying to pretend that nothing had changed when everything had shifted. Every time I saw him, my heart would race, and I'd feel that sharp pang again, the one that reminded me of how much my trust had been broken. But I knew I couldn't live like this forever. I had to confront these feelings for my own peace, for my own healing. One evening, after everyone had gone out to dinner, I decided to go for a walk. The cool air hit me as soon as I stepped outside, and I felt the weight on my shoulders loosen just a little bit. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, clarity, answers, or simply an escape from the chaos inside my mind. But as I walked, my thoughts began to quiet. I thought about the conversations I had with Sarah, the gentle encouragement to take my time. I thought about the way my cousin had apologized about his guilt and his sorrow, but I also thought about my own needs, my own boundaries. I needed to put myself first. I needed to heal, and healing didn't mean pretending that nothing had happened. Healing meant facing the truth, confronting the pain, and allowing myself the time and space to rebuild. I came back from that walk with a sense of determination. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't keep running from the truth. I had to face it head on. Even if it meant distancing myself from my cousin for a while, I didn't owe him anything but the opportunity to heal, and that's exactly what I was going to do. The days after my walk were filled with a strange kind of tension. I had come to terms with the fact that I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I couldn't ignore the feelings of betrayal that kept creeping up on me. But at the same time, I knew that I had to face my cousin again. I couldn't keep avoiding him. Not if I wanted to move forward. Not if I wanted to heal. The decision wasn't easy. I didn't know what I was going to say to him, or how he would react. But I knew it was something I had to do. I couldn't keep holding this inside me, not if I wanted to feel free again. So one evening, after everyone else had gone to bed, I went to the living room, where my cousin was sitting, his eyes glued to his phone as if nothing had ever happened. He looked up when I entered, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us felt thick, heavy with everything that had been left unsaid. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, setting his phone aside and turning his full attention to me. His face was a mixture of guilt and uncertainty, as if he already knew what was coming, but wasn't sure how to respond. I sat down on the couch across from him, taking a deep breath to steady my nerves. This wasn't going to be easy. I knew that, but I also knew it was necessary. "Listen." I started, my voice shaking slightly. What happened that night, it wasn't just uncomfortable for me, it was traumatic. I don't know what you were thinking, but it left me feeling violated. I don't even know how to explain it, but it hurt, and I can't just forget about it. He looked down, his face reddening with shame. "I know," he murmured. "I'm so sorry. I don't even know what came over me. It was a huge mistake, and I never should have done it. I wasn't thinking. I didn't want to hurt you, and I'm so sorry that I did." His apology was sincere, and I could see the guilt in his eyes. But sincerity didn't erase the hurt. It didn't take away the sense of betrayal. I felt the sense that something I'd never expected to happen had crossed a line I couldn't easily erase. "I know you didn't mean to hurt me," I said quietly, "but that doesn't change how it made me feel. I can't unsee what happened, and I can't just pretend that everything is fine. I need time to process this. I need space to figure out how I feel about it, and I need to set boundaries moving forward." He nodded again, his eyes filled with regret. "I understand. I'll give you whatever space you need. I'll respect your boundaries, and I'll do whatever I can to make it right." The conversation ended there. There was nothing else left to say, at least not in that moment. The damage had been done, and while his apology was a step in the right direction, it wasn't going to fix everything. It wasn't going to erase the feeling of being violated, but it was a start, and for that, I was grateful. The rest of the trip passed in a haze of strained interactions. I couldn't look at my cousin the same way, and I couldn't pretend that everything was okay. I did my best to avoid him taking extra care to stay in my room whenever he was around. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't fair to either of us, but it was the only way I knew how to cope. On the last day of the trip, my family gathered for a final breakfast before everyone left. The atmosphere was subdued, the excitement of the theme park long gone, replaced by a quiet tension that hung in the air. I found myself sitting at the table, my eyes on the plate in front of me, wishing I could just disappear. It was then that my cousin approached me. He sat down next to me, his face soft with sincerity. "I just wanted to say again how sorry I am." He said, his voice low. "I never meant for things to go this way. I didn't want to hurt you. Please believe me." I didn't know how to respond. I didn't want to be angry, but I couldn't shake the pain. I looked at him, taking a moment to gather my thoughts. "I know you're sorry," I said quietly. "But sorry isn't enough to make everything go back to the way it was. I don't think we'll ever be the same. And that's something I'm still trying to come to terms with." He nodded, looking resigned. "I understand," he said softly, "and I'll respect whatever you need. I just wanted you to know that I'm truly sorry. For everything." There was nothing more to say after that. I wasn't sure if we would ever have a real relationship again, but in that moment, I knew that I had done what I needed to do. I had confronted the situation, I had spoken my truth, and I had set the boundaries I needed for my own peace of mind. As I left the Airbnb and headed back to my own apartment, a strange sense of relief washed over me. The trip had been a disaster, but I had learned something about myself, that I could stand up for myself. Even in the most uncomfortable of situations, I had learned that healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about acknowledging the pain, confronting it, and giving myself permission to move on. It would take time, but I knew I was on the path to healing, and that was enough for now. I didn't need to have all the answers, and I didn't need to have it all figured out. All I needed was the courage to keep moving forward one step at a time.